So now we know why Brian Lara is not just one of the best batsmen of all time, but he's probably one of the best uh, pundits, predictors, foresighters. I don't know what else you can say. Being the only expert pundit to predict Afghanistan to make it to the semi-final. And had it not been for maybe a couple of deliveries, he would have had the clean sweep with having West Indies as well in there. But all of us experts who had the obvious nail down semi final of India, England, South Africa, and Australia all left with egg on our faces, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
or
there's a
just proof
difference
or
between
just proof that
a
our
guy who scored 500 plus in an innings and you and I, who probably have a higher score, well, at least I do, of like sub 25. So, you know what I mean? Like,
in high school
there
cricket
is
as well, not
an
even first class
absolute
cricket,
difference.
huh?
Yeah, my under 12 cricketing career. But yeah, I mean, there you go. I think there was one other person who had Afghanistan. I may be mistaken, but I mean, we laughed at Brian Lara. We
Yeah.
laughed at the fact that he had Afghanistan, and we thought, in what world can Afghanistan make it in a group that boasted India and Australia?
Well, before that, the group that they were with New Zealand and West Indies, that was the
Oh,
first
of course,
hurdle, right?
yes. I mean, they were in a very difficult position. The fact that they have, I mean, this is a great sporting underdog story, and not just once, but a couple of times where they've
Yeah.
done it against the odds, and it may still be
Yeah.
a few more chapters written in this story in the semi-final. But look, ultimately, we have our four semi-finalists. I
Mhm.
would assume that not many people will get this 100% right. Many wouldn't have predicted Afghanistan, and more importantly, not many would have predicted, in my opinion, either South Africa or England.
Yeah.
I think West Indies, there were quite a few West Indies sort of predictors out there. And look, West Indies, you'd be forgiven to think that they are, the home team. They have the home advantage, and they've had really good T20 players of late. But something always told me that, when it comes to clutch situations, forget the choker stag for a second. But clutch situations come out clutch players and players who have experience
Yeah.
in playing knockout type games in global marquee events. The West Indies, obviously, as we all know, didn't play the ODI World Cup, last time. Did they play the last T20 World Cup?
They got knocked out
Knocked
in
out
the
first.
qualifier, I
Yeah, yeah,
think, didn't they? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I guess that's what caught up, with them. Whereas South Africa, to their credit, this is the second semi-final they made in 2 years in limited overs cricket, and in fairness to them, they should have made it 2 years ago in the T20 World Cup in Australia, if it wasn't for an unexplainable loss to the Netherlands.
Yeah. I mean, even the year before 2021, I think they missed out only because they lost the first game to Australia badly on net round 8 or something.
Correct.
But
They won 4 out of 5 games. So
yeah,
well done.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of number of wins, they're probably way ahead of Pakistan, who've actually made two of those three semifinals. But we always
Well
find a way
said.
to bring them into this conversation, right? But I mean, we can't help ourselves. But look, I mean, yeah. So the idea is just, I guess, review the chaos that ensued over the last couple of days, and kind of review the ending of the Super 8 stage, and then of course preview the semifinals, which can go pretty much any way whatsoever. If you ask me, Moeen probably a bit more. Um, how to say focused, or you're pretty much set in your ways
A
as
little more
what's going to happen.
bullish.
But
A
we'll
little more
we'll,
bullish
we'll
on who I want.
we'll,
On
we'll,
who
we'll
I
come
think
to
will make
that.
it.
We'll come to that at the end. But look, I mean, what can you say? We've discussed Afghanistan, sort of touched on South Africa a little bit, and the West Indies. I'll just take a second to I guess come back to South Africa. Look, I mean, yes, if you look at their record, and India, look, both of them 6 out of 6, I think it is, or 7 out of 7. Well, India had that one rain off game. Can't do much about that, but South Africa have won every single game. They won the 3 games in the in the Super Eights, and then the 4 games in the group stage, right? So yeah, 7. But every single game, you know, and you're talking about opponents ranking from England, ranging from England all the way to Nepal, where they've every single game has gone down at least to the last ball or the last 2 3 balls. Even the West Indies game, okay, they hit a six of, but it was the first ball of the last over. That's probably the most one-sided victory they've had. So I don't know whether this is the South Africa where they're just riding their luck and eventually their luck is going to run out in the context of this World Cup, or is this the greater South African history of cricket over the last 25, 30, or maybe 32 years if you count the 92 World Cup? And this is the gods conspiring or to finally make it work for South Africa for their 32 years of heartbreak and kind of pushing them over the line this time around.
You know, think about a bank, okay, and think about, every time South Africa choke, coins get deposited in that bank account, okay, and they have inherited such a massive deficit in terms of choking victories that they needed a tournament like this to really. I don't even think it comes close to getting parity after the 32 years of heartbreak, right? I mean, the deficit is still quite
Yeah.
significant. So yes, it could well be karma turning it around. It could well be sort of, uh, you know, or maybe, and I say this with a slight pinch of salt, it may just be that this is a South African team that is perhaps mentally toughest,
Yeah.
mentally strongest, right? Maybe there's a small exception to be made with the 99 team, but that aside, I consider this to be a really mentally tough team.
Yeah.
And I say that because today's proliferation of global franchise leagues means that these players, yes, I know the standard varies, but these players are used to knockout situations a lot more than in our time when I mean, forget franchise leagues. You have World Cups every year.
Yeah.
I mean, there's either the ODI World Cup, then
Yeah.
you have two T20 World Cups, and you have in the middle a Champions Trophy until the next ODI World Cup. So every year there's a global tournament. Okay.
Yeah.
And on top of that, add to that the IPL franchise leagues across the board, right? And even the South African League, which is quite competitive. So, from a time where you used to have knockout games once every 4 years to the current situation where you have knockout games, at least four knockout games every year, you're bound to get better, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's what you're seeing with South Africa. In every game, someone else has put their hand up. That, for me,
Yeah.
is the
True.
best and most important sort of
Yeah.
criteria in measuring how successful a team has been here, right? Everyone, there's Miller, there's Clarkson, there's, someone puts their hand up, and very often it's those who have excelled in franchise leagues, it's those who've been
Yeah.
part of this team for a long period of time. So I actually think South Africa are a really solid team. Okay. And in fairness to them, I think some of the close wins against minnow teams did happen in New York on really,
Yeah.
really questionable pitch conditions,
Yeah.
right? You know, on conditions where, or on a surface where the mighty, mighty batting lineup of Pakistan failed to chase 119. All sarcasm intended there. But what I'm saying is, I think South Africa in particular had some really tough conditions, and I guess that's also what played into it. Had they played some of those games in the West Indies, I think they would have been much more one-sided. But there you have it. I think, but
Yeah.
just coming down to the Super Eights, right? So
Yeah.
if we just start with that group, because that group is, well, we thought it would be the more exciting group, but it turned out the other way around. But look, with the USA there, there were, I don't want to say easy points to be had, but you would have backed the West Indies, South Africa, and England to take those
Yeah.
games. But for me, what really really made me believe in the South African cause was the win against England, right?
Yeah.
And what I liked about that was it was a game that kept going back and forth, right? It was up and down, up and down. You didn't know which way it was going, and there was a period, Livingston and Brooke, when they had a partnership, you thought England were well in front,
Yeah.
right? And you had Moeen Ali to come, you
It
have
was
Gale who can
I
bat,
remember it was 45 in 6 overs with 6 or 5
wickets,
wickets in hand. Yeah.
six wickets in hand, and then you suddenly thought, I mean, this is England, right? And you had the English commentators, Nasser Hussain, Owen Morgan, who you felt would be a little biased in the sense they're like, oh well, is it a bit too late when I think it was Livingston who got out? They were still lamenting how that one over by
Bartman.
Bartman. Bartman really gave it away, and you're like, why did he go to the Yorker deliveries when pitching it into the surface was yielding such good results? But I thought after the Bartman over, South Africa recovered amazingly well,
Yeah,
right? And and literally it was just one good over. I recall, was it
yeah,
Rabada? I think it was Rabada. One good over,
Lubada.
and that's when that's what you need to
Yeah,
understand about T20 cricket. It just takes a small string of good balls to turn a game around. And I just
yeah,
felt South Africa did not give up that self belief. I thought Markram was exceptionally calm. None of that Babar Azam, like, putting your arms all around when Bartman was being hit, like just, flapping his
yeah,
shoulders. It seemed as if the team was under control, right?
yeah.
Okay, Bartman didn't do it, someone else did it,
Yeah,
right?
and
And
I
I
think
think
what
that,
was yeah, I think what was really impressive actually, if you listen to, especially after the England game, if you listen to Markram's interview or the press conference of the post match ceremony, he specifically obviously that Bartman over was pointed out to him, and he said, "Look, this was our plan. The plans will not change. The process does not change. The issue was with the execution, right?" So he never went and threw his boat under the bus by saying, "Oh, we'd asked him to do something else," or like what. He still trusts the plan and the process because their plan was, yes, we will ball full, and what happens happens, right? And that's what he backed his team to do. Eventually, it came good because that's what Rabada and Nokia did. But and the issue was with the execution. But he never said, "Oh yeah, we should have bowl length and that." So which just shows that they are kind of following a template and a process. And sometimes that happens, right? Where you do get it wrong. I mean, five full tosses is an exceptionally poor performance.
I mean, one of them,
um,
I think one of them he got away with actually, but yes.
yeah. Especially with your, I think it was for a couple of times he had his mid off or mid on up.
Yes,
And he still
yes.
kept putting full tosses.
Yeah, so I
Um,
mean, there is a slight chink in that plan. I mean,
yeah,
there is, if you're aiming Yorker
yeah,
length and you've got mid on or mid off inside the circle, there's
yeah,
something clearly wrong with the plan. But
yeah,
I actually made a very good observation. I'm going to make one point there. Are we being a bit hypocritical? Because if the Babar Azam method of
yeah,
following a plan actually worked, would we be praising him to the hilt at this point in time? Because I think the criticism there is he follows a plan, but he doesn't think on the spot when conditions
yeah,
are suggesting otherwise. I thought, to be really frank, I thought barring, I mean, Markram and South Africa have been
yeah,
terrific, but I do believe that Markram should have adapted. I am sure they thought of
yeah,
Bartman bowling the Yorker length because it's been so successful in the past. But in that particular game, when they saw the conditions,
yeah.
I think they should have
True.
adapted
Could
personally.
have potentially, yeah, and obviously that catch of Markram, I think was it of Sam Curran, the one went over his head. And I think after the match again, QDK really kind of said you like even in actuality when you're at the ground, it seems even more difficult because of the wind and everything. That was a phenomenal catch. So look, yeah, I mean, you do say that South Africa are probably from your what you're saying, I can kind of deduce that you're kind of in the camp that South Africa have done exceptionally well, and they're only going to get better, rather than the other way where I'm thinking eventually their luck's going to run out. I'm slightly in the other camp, and I'll come to why. Partly again, we go to specific moments, right, in the World Cup where these things have happened to South Africa in the past, but now they're kind of on the receiving end of it or benefiting from it. The Bangladesh, leg by that should have been four was reviewed and the DRS, right? So they got away with that. England's full tosses. Um, I mean, Russell running himself out as well. If he'd probably stuck around in that West Indies game, who knows? They would have gone 150, 160, and then that would have been a completely different game. So they've had things, and I just feel if there's any team that can lose to Afghanistan out of these three, it is South Africa.
For sure.
But
Uh,
they should still beat them. But we probably thought that about Australia. We thought about New Zealand. We thought that about other teams. But so I think South Africa is still. I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced. I think Reza Hendricks has been a bit flawed. QDK has been fantastic. I think he's kind of followed the Rohit Sharma model, right? Where he just goes bang bang. It's come off for the last couple of games. Whereas Hendricks, I think he's been struggling a little bit. So I think they need to sort that out. So yeah, I'm not 100% convinced by them, to be honest. But still, I mean, 7 out of 7 wins, very very impressive.
When if I were to ask you, change
Yeah,
South Africa's name with Australia and assume that Australia did this exact path that South Africa did, you may be thinking slightly differently. You'll be like, oh, it's Australia peaking at just the right time. They're winners by DNA.
yeah, true.
They know how to win. You know, it doesn't matter how
Yeah,
they win as long as they win. They know how to
true.
just win. It's in their blood. I feel South Africa's the perception is still
Yeah,
marred by that choker's tag. And
yeah,
I am a firm believer in one thing, which is it is only a monkey on the back when you make it a monkey on the back. And what I
true.
mean by that is,
Mm,
for many years, nobody ever talked about that India-Pakistan record, where Pakistan have never beaten India in an ODI World Cup, or until 21, even the T20 World Cup. But you know, nobody ever said that until recently, right? It started becoming a thing in 2011, I recall. Before that, nobody ever paid heed to this.
yeah,
You know, like I can name so many other sort of coincidences, like Pakistan always beating Sri Lanka, I think barring once in World Cups, or
yeah,
Pakistan always having a good record against New Zealand. Right?
yeah,
You can always make monkeys on backs, and in South Africa, it's this annoying chokers tag, and and once someone identifies it, it becomes like it spreads like wildfire across social
yeah,
media and all. Right? When they forget that actually South Africa have won, I think there's a stat which shows South Africa won more bilateral series in between 2005 and 2015, when bilateral series were at their peak, than any other team barring the invincible Australians, right?
yeah,
And a lot of those series were like 2-all heading into a decider, right?
yeah.
So you can look at that stuff and say, you know what, actually South Africa are really
Maybe.
high quality. It just, like Pakistan have a
Yeah,
high win-loss record against India, but it's just generally people talk about these particular peculiarities, and
yeah,
I think over exaggerate them. I look, I could well be sitting here in a few days' time after a South African choke against Afghanistan, but I still won't let that deter me from saying
yeah,
that I think this is South Africa's most convincing sort of journey
yeah.
compared to the other couple of
True.
times recently.
Yeah, I guess. Uh, Definitely. I mean, for sure. They've won all their games. Can't complain. I mean, yeah, we kind of skipped over the USA game as well, which probably the only team apart from obviously Pakistan that the US have fought against and come close to was South Africa. They were chasing 190 something, and then the US nearly actually pulled it off.
Got there, yeah, yeah.
Um, but uh, but yeah, look, and we saw what England and the West Indies did to them. So, um, but yeah, look, I mean, it's good. I still think South Africa should be favorites for that semi final. But maybe let's England. I mean, they've kind of done what's expecting of them or expected of them. I don't think there's a lot much more we can say about them. Um, you know, Josh Butler coming into his own at the right time. I still think there's the balance needs to, with Will Jackson not playing, they've got in Sam Curran. Uh, I think their bowling, well, their batting looks a little bit light if Butler and Sword don't get going, just because of the way they play. Uh, but still, I think they're pretty strong. But yeah, they've got a very tough semi-final against India. So
I mean, yeah, they. Yeah. Look, I completely agree. I think it's not
yeah,
just India; it's also the conditions in which they'll be playing India, which is the spin-friendly home conditions of Guyana, right? With rain around as well that they have to contend with, because
yeah,
there's no reserve day, which means India may go through if it's going to be rained off. Hopefully, given it's 20 overs and given how it tends to rain in the Caribbean, it tends to be really strong for a very short
yeah,
period of time. Hopefully, we'll get a game. But I guess the toss will be really important. But before we preview that game, I think on England, the one thing I've always, been a big supporter of England, right? Because barring the 23 ODI World Cup, I think it's fair to say that they are the golden generation of
yeah,
limited overs cricketers. Now, I know there's Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli also in India, but if you look at a generation of five, six players that have actually not just been brilliantly talented, but also gone on to win trophies, it's England, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's this. and you can't, they always tend to come good in knockout tournaments, right? They've developed this habit of sort of starting slow and then really like coming good, when it matters. And
Yeah.
I just think, I know why you're laughing, and I'm not going to draw that analogy, uh, because people will accuse us of always bringing certain teams into conversations. But basically, I think England have a really strong batting lineup.
Yeah.
Personally, I think even whether or not you play Will Jacks, I think is immaterial. I think Moeen Ali could actually be a blessing in disguise on spin-friendly conditions where you probably
Yeah.
need an anchor higher up the order. I don't know, but for me, it's the bowling, right? It's the bowling that gets the scrutiny because they're really good on paper in isolation, but somehow I think they've conceded more runs than they would have liked to, right? Archer's gone for runs, but I know, right, I consider him to be clutch. Reece Topley hasn't been the best. Chris Jordan's been good. Mark Wood is hit and miss. He's one of those players not too dissimilar to Rao for a few other fast, but Lockie Ferguson. They'll be brilliant one day and utterly hopeless
Yeah.
another. But Adil Rashid, for
Yeah.
me, is the man that holds a lot of the cards that determine whether England will make it. We've talked so much about batting. Every pundit talks about Butler and full salt, but for me, it's Adil Rashid because Indian batting is probably the best batting lineup against Spain, no questions asked. And Adil Rashid is a top-ranked T20 bowler. I think he's very underrated. I think he's a phenomenal spinner. I have him in my team of the tournament. And I actually think that is going to be a really, really good matchup. It's the
Yeah.
Indian batting against Adil Rashid. If he doesn't get intimidated and he bowls to his potential and uses the conditions in his favor, and ideally for him, if he bowls first, which he
Yeah.
can't control, I think,
Yeah.
England have a chance. But if
Yeah.
Adil Rashid leaks runs, does not go for any wickets, I'm afraid it's going to be quite difficult for
Yeah.
England to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. My only concern from England's point of view is by the time Rashid comes on to bowl, which is probably sixth or seventh over onwards, Rohit might have taken the game away from them already. So and the issue, and if you look at the pattern, especially in the Caribbean leg, India, South Africa, even the Australia India game, the openers have started fast. At least one batter has started fast, and then the batting has tapered. The South Africa England game was the same. The India Australia game was the same, where you've had a good start, and then after a while, you
A
get
bit of a,
the
yeah.
first half is like you're going at eight, nines, even 10 and over, and then the run rate kind of drops by 2 or 3 runs, right? So you end up going at sevens or eights. So and that's the pattern where they're batting first or second. So I think that is a big question mark. So if England can take an early wicket or get Sharma out early, that'll be a big factor. But if by the time Rashid comes on to bowl and India is 70 for one in 6 overs, then it might be too late anyway.
Yeah,
And then
and
they can actually play him around for six and a half.
yeah, and look, I'll make 2 points here. One is, look, we can't ignore the fact that the last time these two played in a semi-final, it was probably the biggest one-sided sort of
And
knockout game in recent memory. I mean, it was
yeah,
an annihilation that actually, in many ways, fueled the change in approach from Rohit Sharma and company. Right? It
yeah,
was a massive catalyst to India's renaissance, if you like. But how much will that game play into the Indian team's minds? Yes, they're professional, yes, but they're also
yeah,
human, right? They know, they can feel, they can remember that battering. It was only 2 years ago, and when you come on to the pitch, and if India happen to bat first, I fear it'll be at the back of their minds, especially if they're batting first.
yeah,
And when they start one, when they're setting a target, they may aim for too high, in spite of the fact that Guyana's low scoring. So in that, they may make mistakes.
yeah,
The second is when they come on to bowl, and there'll be a bit of nerves in there. With Ashdeep usually takes the first over, few nerves around. I don't know. That's a question. Now in India, if there's any team to get rid of a massive sort of mental block, it's India, right?
yeah,
They've done it time and again against Australia. But
yeah,
that's one thing. The second thing for me that I just want to say is, England. If you look at how they've gone about in this tournament, when they need to win, they don't
yeah,
just win, they win massively. Like it's like, okay, head
Yeah.
down. It's
Yeah.
like the analogy is, it's like, when you're cramming before an exam. When you're like, okay, you're procrastinating, but then the day before your exam, you will literally
Yeah.
cram the entire textbook and like do what you should have done over a month's time in one night, because the adrenaline and you know what what people can do when they're under pressure is sometimes noteworthy. For me, that's England, right? England, when they need to win, and a semi-final is just
Yeah.
about as much, well, is a knockout just like any of the other games. They It brings out the best in them. It's like Butler will be like, all right, now or never,
Yeah.
we have to do it. And when they
Yeah.
have to do it, they don't
Yeah.
just do it. They're phenomenal, right? It
Yeah.
was against the West Indies, um, and
Against Oman.
sorry, well, wait, it was against Oman. It was against, uh, wasn't it Namibia?
Yeah, Namibia, Oman.
Namibia, Oman.
Uh,
Yes, quality of opposition aside, but the absolute annihilation. And then it was their most recent game when they
USA.
absolutely thrashed the USA. I mean, like what, 5 6s, game over, and like suddenly you're like, like and I
Yeah.
remember I was tuning in to watch, like I was at a wedding and I tuned to watch, and literally in like 5 minutes I came out. I'm like, oh, game
Yeah.
over, but
Yeah.
that's England for you, and that's why I think England are a
Yeah.
team that for me could well be favorites to win if
Yeah.
they're able to hold
Yeah.
things together against India.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you mentioned the USA game, obviously. I'm not sure this is flexing or laying myself out to be made fun of, but I was there. And we actually decided, look, we should leave a little bit early because to beat the traffic and all, and obviously it was an England USA game, so and England needed 30 runs. So like, we'll just stick around for another over. And then that was when Butler went 6-6-6. And I'm like, well, there's that plan gone.
And they're like, oh damn it, oh actually that. But actually, I mean that's an interesting segue into, actually it'd be great. Like, um, you were in Barbados. You
Yeah,
saw two of USA's game
of course.
as a really really staunch American supporter. Um, I mean, how was it? I mean, you actually saw, was it the West Indies USA
West Indies,
and
USA, and then
England
England.
USA?
Yeah,
And watching England live, I mean, I look. The reason I say that is because I've read that sometimes in windier conditions you don't always get a full appreciation when you're watching on TV just how tough certain
yeah,
conditions are, etc. But what was your sort of
yeah.
take when you were there?
Look, I mean, it was obviously the expectation was when these tickets were purchased that it's going to be Pakistan game. But anyways, ignoring all of that, and in a way, it kind of liberated, us being there. That, oh, imagine if Pakistan had played like the US, then the whole trip would have been pretty much remembered for that. So we enjoyed it. It was really fun. It was a really fun experience. I mean, the crowd is amazing. It's a really surreal experience. From a cricketing fan's point of view, I think selfishly, detaching myself from the Pakistani kind of fan that I am, um, it was amazing. I mean, the crowds there, it's something else. I've been lucky enough to watch cricket games, in different parts of the world, but the atmosphere in Barbados for the West Indies USA game, it was a night game. It was phenomenal. And got to witness some fantastic batting. Shea Hope, Nicholas Puran, witnessed my first ever hat trick live, Chris Jordan's hat trick against the US. So saw that live as well. So that was another big tick. And then obviously Josh Butler and his 5 6s. But yeah, it was, and obviously growing up in Pakistan and watching a lot of these kind of the Pakistan games, you're always scarred and expecting the hassle and the admin that you have to go through just to get inside a cricket ground, parking and whatever, just getting in. It was it was so easy. Everything was so relaxed and chilled out. Obviously they had some protocols and stuff, but they kind of really the fans kind of buy into the experience. So, and it wasn't like Lords where you can't even bring flags and stuff, but and it wasn't like the National Stadium Karachi. So it was, yeah, the experience itself was fantastic. Obviously with the caveat that Pakistan wasn't there, and got two very similar games to watch anyway, where the USA batted first. They put up a bit of a fight in the beginning and then collapsed, and then the opposition chased it down. pretty good, which is good as well. It's a T20, right? So you're there to have fun, enjoy it, and seeing fours and sixes and wickets, and then that's pretty much it. So yeah, very, very good. But yeah, back to the World Cup. Let's go into prediction mode, right? So you've got
But before prediction mode, I think if we just take a moment to just talk about the
oh
brilliance in the other group that completely went against expectation. I mean, we don't need to talk about every single game, except let's start with
no,
Afghanistan, Australia.
no,
I mean, as far as look, I understand that calling it an upset is actually offensive to
yeah,
Afghanistan because they are a solid team, right? I
yeah,
mean, they're a team that actually almost beat them in the
yeah,
2023 ODI World Cup if
yeah,
it wasn't for a
yeah,
Maxwell miracle. I mean, that was a miracle.
yeah,
Like, you know,
yeah.
you
And it
won't have
nearly
it
happened
happen again.
again. That nearly happened again in this match. Well, he was the only one who kind of stood
Yeah,
there, but
it did, but you just felt lightning wasn't going to
yeah,
strike twice. There was something about it, right? But in
yeah,
any case, look, that was brilliant. But for me, what happened on yesterday was remarkable, right? I mean, if we talk about the India Australia game, I know on paper it looked like quite a one-sided Indian victory, but this
yeah,
this is what T20 cricket's all about, right? There was a time when Head and Maxwell were going when you're like, you know what, Australia are cruising, but it just takes a wicket. It just, in fact, forget wickets. Wickets are overrated. It just takes 4, 5 dot
yeah,
balls or a string of two good overs, and suddenly I remember the asking rate just jumped to like
yeah,
13, and you're like, how did that happen? And
exactly.
that's what causes a wicket. It's not always the other way around. That a wicket will cause dot balls.
Yeah,
Dot balls bring about a wicket, and I just think, look, Australia lost the game in the first 5 overs. I mean,
yeah,
forget 5 overs, 7, 8 overs. Right? I
yeah,
mean, there was no way they were going to come back from there. It would have needed something unreal from Travis Head again. And I just think, again, whilst that's brilliant from India, it does raise a question, a rather unanswered question, on the over reliance of one of Rohit and Kohli. And the fact that the others still, you know, need a bit of work in order to really convince us of the fact
yeah,
that they can take India home, right, on their own. Like, it
yeah,
just fell after Rohit got out. They were looking at 250, right? And I think when they ended up at 200, yes, if you told them that at the start before the toss, they would have taken it. But after that Rohit innings, they'd be
yeah,
slightly disappointed because it meant Australia had a chance on that wicket. And I just think, again, a few questions on their middle order that still are left unanswered. I'm gonna raise the question on whether it's time now in the semi-final that India finally bring Kohli back to number three. I don't think they'll do it. I think Dravid is a firm believer in going with an approach that they've stood behind and withered a lot of criticism on. But if I were them, I'd say, you know what, this is as good a time as any to just make
yeah.
sure we're putting our best foot forward. Right? That for me is the Indian question here.
Look, I think I agree and disagree to a certain extent. I think yes, Rohit Sharma is key, but I also feel like when it's been Rohit, there's always someone else along with him that's performed, right? That's come up and done, who stepped up. Whether it's Rohit plus Rishabh Pant, whether it's been Pandya, Sky did it in one game. So and Kohli, law of averages, he's bound to come good. So I do think someone has always stepped up along with Rohit to kind of give him, and that's really what all you need in a T20. Right? You need two good innings, and you're home. Um, but the other point is it's the same in the bowling, right? There's Bumrah who has been phenomenal. I mean, that guy is unreal.
Unreal. Unreal.
I mean, these stats are ridiculous, right? I mean, and he's unplayable, and it's not like he's lucky or whatever. There's a one Travis head over that he went for three boundaries in, but he came back phenomenally well. And if you need 40 in 4 overs and you have 2 overs of Bumrah left, you might as well, India won pretty much. But even in the bowling, right? There's Bumrah who's a short shot. Okay, he'll go for maximum 5 and over, whatever. But there's always Bumrah plus one who stepped up, right? In the Pakistan game, it was everyone, but it was
With
mainly
Pandya.
Pandya, right? It was Kuldeep against Australia. Arshdeep has done it a couple of times. So there's always someone who's stepped up along with the bowling, and there you have it. You only need one or two batsmen, and you've got your two bowlers doing it for you, and that's all you really need. And the thing is, it's not this they're just chipping in with a 4 overs for 25. It's 4 overs, 3 for 25. They're taking big wickets. And that's what Kuldeep did. He got Maxwell out, got a couple of wickets, and it become completely transformed the game, right? So, so that's why I think India, with the way they're going, there's always they've got their two kind of Rohit in the batting and Pandya, Bumrah with the bowling, but someone's always stepped up and done it for them, and that's why I really can't look past them. And the other thing is, I mean, all their victories have been convincing, right? I mean, the closest that they've come to losing is against Pakistan of all teams, but all
Yeah,
their other
I don't
games
want to
have
talk
been
about that.
very,
Yeah, yeah.
very, very comfortable. So,
Um,
um, so yeah,
I,
I just can't see. I mean, yes, you mentioned there are certain chinks, but I just think that they're overall too strong, just because someone steps up and just does it for them.
yeah, and look, that's an interesting take. I think, yeah, look, I think England present a different
Yeah,
beast, different challenge. So it's going to be interesting to see. But yes, noted. I mean, India are obviously the betting man's favorite
yeah,
to win,
yeah,
and for good reason. I still believe that there is a slight over reliance,
yeah,
and a better team than Pakistan would have exposed them on that drive in that game when both Rohit and Kohli
yeah,
failed, and it was only
yeah,
Pant who sort of saw them just out of jail ever so
yeah,
slightly. So I do think they, I don't want to say they got lucky. They bowled brilliantly, but
yeah,
it was also helped by a shoddy batting
yeah,
performance. But put that aside,
yeah.
right? I think the other interesting bit is of course Afghanistan. Right
Yeah.
now, look,
I mean, you
Afghanistan
mentioned
make go on.
I'll let you come to your point, but you mentioned shoddy batting. I think we should and over reliance on certain batters. I think Afghanistan
If
is a
ever there
prime
was a
example.
team that embodied that exact principle, it's Afghanistan. It's these two batters that for them make up 80% of their batting. Okay, but I do think that's improved because, as you say, it just needs a couple of lusty blows from the
Yeah,
others and
yeah,
a few to rally around, and they sort of make it work. And they've got the bowling to defend,
yeah,
right? That's the key point here. They, despite their batting gaps, they still come out, and I'll come out to the Bangladesh game in a second, but usually they come out with an aggressive approach because they
yeah,
feel they have the bowling to defend whatever total they put up, as long as it's moderately
yeah,
competitive. Now, the Bangladesh game. Afghanistan making it to the semi final is a brilliant thing, okay? But I think we can all agree that for a team of Afghanistan's ability, it was quite disappointing to see that
yeah,
game against Bangladesh. Right, they are a far better team. They should have rolled over Bangladesh. No disrespect to Bangladesh, but they should have rolled over them. But
yeah,
you can tell the weight of the occasion got to them. You could tell they were nervous. Their first 10 overs or 12 overs, they hadn't lost a wicket, and they were going in 4 runs and over. I mean, you could tell that there was
yeah,
lots and lots of nerves there, and that worries me, right? Because
yeah,
that will only be multiplied in a semi-final and then in a final, right? And
yeah,
especially if it's a final against India, so I just think that's what will catch them out, their inexperience at this end of a tournament. Because on a better team than Bangladesh would have exposed them for the multiple errors that they made at time to time, the trembles, the tremors, all
yeah,
that. So that for me was a bit disappointing, right? I mean, take nothing away, they always stepped up. They every time you saw it, whenever they were losing the plot, they'll come
yeah,
back with 2 wickets and 2 balls, or like two
yeah,
wickets and 3 balls. So they'll come roaring back. But
yeah.
I mean, Bangladesh did give it to them slightly, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think the rain breaks probably did help them a little bit because that's when Bangladesh lost their momentum, and a couple of times when they
Exactly.
came back from the rain break, not let alone Gulbadin and his fantastic acting.
I mean, he got shot, didn't he? As Michael Vaughan said, he got shot. I mean, he got shot, came back, and got a really
Yeah,
important
yeah.
wicket, and then was
Jonathan Trott.
dancing. He was dancing.
He
You
bowled an
see that?
over like 2 overs after that. He took a wicket actually.
And then he was
Um,
like dancing away, and then it's like.
yeah, I
I
think
mean,
that was
I have
Jonathan
some
Trott.
cramp issues. I need to
Yeah,
speak to his doctor. But yeah, I mean, like it was.
yeah.
Look,
But
you saw Jonathan Trott giving
yeah,
the rather
slow down or whatever. Yeah,
indiscreet sort of message.
yeah,
But look,
but
I mean,
yeah,
I I wish that hadn't happened. Right, that
yeah,
reminds me of the time when they mancated Shadab Khan in a rather pointless ODI in comparison.
yeah,
But I think there's a bit of desperation there. There's a bit of
Yeah.
desperation that stems from the fact that they've come so close on so many occasions, and they
Yeah.
feel that they've been robbed. Whether it's a Naseem Shah, couple of sixes, whether it's a Maxwell
Yeah.
miracle, and I think they just feel it's that sort of feeling that you have that the world is against me, and I need to do
Yeah.
everything in my power to get it right. And I just think that victories like these will do them
Yeah.
good in the long run when they realize that they don't
True.
need to do it, because they didn't need to do that to win. They didn't need to do it.
Yeah.
They won irrespective. They didn't win
Yeah.
because it rained, right? They won because they
Well,
were the better team.
well, yeah. I mean, it was raining. If they didn't come back onto the field and it was that one extra delivery that injury would have cost them, then because they were 2 runs behind
True, true, true. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
ahead
yeah.
on. But there is a bit of an irony in this as well, right? People talk about spirit of the game and all of that. The two teams that would have ended up suffering the most because of that injury or whatever time wasting tactic would have been Australia, Johnny Bairstow's spirit of cricket and all that, and Bangladesh timed out and all of that.
Oh no,
So
no, no, that
in
irony
a
was lost
way,
on me. I know, I know. I was thinking exactly about that. I was like, Bangladesh can't be the team to complain, and certainly Australia can't be. But in any case, I think you would agree
yeah,
that Gulbadin Naib literally falling when nothing has hit him whatsoever.
yeah.
It takes it when it comes to rather
I mean,
obscure strategies as
yeah,
opposed to Bairstow coming out of his wicket or being
yeah.
or
I
a
mean,
timed out. I mean,
they could have done so much more. I think it was just like the captain could have gone together and like changed the field or something.
yeah, I
Just
could
have
have
a
done
chat with
anything. They could have done anything.
like,
Or they could have ordered more sand, on the popping crease. So they could
yeah,
have done
some,
anything, but instead
yeah,
it's as if they were
yeah,
lost for ideas,
yeah.
and they literally and Gulbin Ahmed, I'm so desperate that I'm
Like,
just gonna take a sacrifice for my love for
yeah.
country and just fall down.
Exactly. But I mean, yeah, but, just taking a step back as well. I mean, at the end of the day, you mentioned their batting approach, right? The score was 115 for 5 in 20 overs, right? I mean, and that also because Rashid Khan had a couple of sixes towards the end. There would have been like 106, 107 for 5. I mean, that is an unacceptable score in T20, right? It's not just the 115, it's the for 5 as well, which makes it even more
It's
bizarre.
terrible, and it's against a team like Bangladesh, who, yes, barring Fizz,
Yeah.
everyone else, I mean, they don't have the likes of Bumrah or other players who can just bowl dot ball after dot ball at will. I mean, even if they did, you can scramble your way to at least 135. You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
and look, speaking of Rashid Khan, I think he should have been man of the match. I mean, what more does the guy need to do? He hit the three sixes that were
Yeah.
absolutely crucial, and he got, was it 3 or 4 wickets? I
He
mean,
got 4 wickets, yeah.
he
And
got
I mean,
four
if Green
wickets
got just
for
two
like
wickets at
five
the
runs
end
and over.
only. Yeah.
I mean, come on, like how? I look, everyone was brilliant, but there's a clear differentiator, and
Yeah.
that was Rashid Khan. Anyways, we're into the semi-finals, right? By hook
Yeah.
or by crook, you've got a repeat of Melbourne in India versus England in Guyana without a reserve day to boot, right? So that's one, and then you've got the semi-final that just precedes it ever so slightly. And given the timing, it is ever so slightly. It is
Yeah.
South Africa against Afghanistan. So starting with that, Zaid, your predictions. So let's do this. Who you think is going to win? Who the key player from either side will be? One each. That's it. And who you think will be the highest scorer and wicket taker? Let's go.
Right. So yeah, for all of everything that Afghanistan have done, I think it will be South Africa. I'll back South Africa to get over the line. I mean, if I guess I said if there's one team that can lose to Afghanistan, it's South Africa. South Africa to win. Key player of South Africa, I think it's QDK. Because if he gets off to a good start, then there's the same Rohit Sharma kind of approach. He's the one who can negate Rashid Khan and the spinners. Um, and from Afghanistan's side, it's got to be obviously Rashid. I mean, he is absolutely key. Highest run scorer, it'll be Gurbaz and QDK. Surprise, surprise. And then highest wicket takers, I'll go Rabada and I'll go Faruqi.
Okay, not Rashid Khan. Okay, well, look, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna say it's gonna be South Africa, and I think, and I'm gonna I'm gonna be a bit bullish here, and I could well be eating my words in just over 24 hours, but that's what the fun of these predictions is. So I'm going to do it. I think it's going to be South Africa's best performance to date, and they're going to really set a real send a real message out, right? Everyone's been saying the match on Thursday is effectively the final, and they'll win. Whoever wins the semi final between India and England will win the World Cup. I think that's a disservice to South Africa, and I think they'll want to send a really really hard hitting message. So I'm going to go with South Africa for a convincing win here. I just think the pressure of a semi final will tell on Afghanistan the same way that the pressure of a quasi quarter final told on them, even though they had, if it rained and
Yeah.
they would have easily won. So South Africa, the key players. Look. I know Rashid Khan is key, but for me, he's all like I think it's the players around him. They'll need to step up. So for me, it's Gurbaz.
Yeah.
Gurbaz hasn't quite fired in some of the more recent games, and I think they absolutely 100% need him. He makes up, I'd say, 60% of Afghanistan's batting.
Yeah.
And if Afghanistan are to win, he owes out the run, but more him will need to come good. Okay, so that for me. On the other side, for South Africa, you say QDK, I say Killer Miller. Okay, because I do believe in classic South African style, they may lose a couple of wickets here and there, right? They will.
Yeah.
That's South Africa for you. But they have that middle order that's really going to see them through. And for me, because he's lefty, negating Rashid Khan, as you pointed out, and also negating sort of Faruqi, I'm going to go with Killer Miller. Okay, big fan of
Yeah.
him. So um and I think top scorer will be, I've said Miller in one. I'll stick with Miller, maybe Klaasen, but I'll be one of the two there. And on Afghanistan side, it'll be Gurbaz. And actually, I think, yeah, I could even go with the anchor and Makram, but he's had a bit of a tough tournament to play. Look, on the bowling, I think it's going to be Rashid Khan, and I'm going to go with Nokia because I just think with his extra pace, it may be
Yeah.
too much for Afghanistan. I think that's
Yeah.
for me the thing. He's phenomenal as well.
Yeah.
So that's for me. We've got that. Now, moving on to having said whatever we've just said, I'm going to say perhaps the final of the World
The
Cup on
effective final.
Thursday. India, England. Let's go.
All right. So I'm gonna go India to win. Rohit Sharma, key and top run scorer, in my opinion. I think it's relatively straightforward. Um, for England, I'll go. Look, the key player is Jofra Archer because if he strikes early, then you kind of break the back of the Indian batting, and that's the key. Drop run scorer, I will go. I'll actually go Johnny Bairstow. I think he's due one. I think England might lose a couple of early wickets, and Johnny Bairstow to kind of anchor them through to a middling total. And then highest wicketer, I'll go Archer, and I'll go Kuldeep Yadav.
And for India, highest scorer, who did you have?
Rohit.
Oh, you're right. Okay, well, I'm gonna be a bit. I'm gonna go a bit unconventional and say England are gonna win. I know that's a big call, and a part of me thinks that it's gonna be toss dependent. If England are gonna win, if England are gonna win, they need to chase. I don't see them winning by batting first, but I have a feeling inside me that thinks we're gonna see the best of England, right? And I'm gonna go with England. Just the over dependency on a few players on the Indian side. In terms of India's key player, clutch, I'm actually gonna go with Rohit Sharma and Bumrah, right? But because we're playing against England, and England's
Yeah.
strength is their batting, I'm gonna go Bumrah for that reason
Right.
because to negate England's sort of real strength. On England's side, I'm going Adil Rashid. I really think, I mean, no matter how good or bad the start is, Adil Rashid's middle overs are absolutely critical. If he needs to fire against India's high quality batting lineup against spin in order for England to have a chance here. So I'm going Rashid. And when it comes to top run scorers, I'm gonna go with a slightly left field suggestion here, and I'm gonna go with Punt. And I think the run scorer from from England's side, that'll be slightly more conventional and go for Joss Butler.
Yeah.
And on the bowling side, it's Adil Rashid and I'll actually go Kuldeep. I
Yeah.
think that's his mystery spin may. I think Bumrah will be the most effective from an
Yeah. Of
economy
course.
perspective, but I think from
Yeah.
wickets, I think it's often the other bowler. That's why
Yeah.
it's very tough to judge Bumrah by his wickets column because you actually need to look at the wickets tally of all
Yeah.
his other bowlers because he's the
Exactly.
one who builds the pressure that ultimately results in a wicket at the other end.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I completely agree.
So, so there you have it. We're in the business end of the tournament. A few surprises, a few usual suspects, but that's exactly what you want in a tournament. Uh, if I were Brian Lara, I would pick up the phone to the betting companies and make his prediction and put his name down for the lottery because I think, I'd love to know who he thinks is going to win. If ever, I
Yeah.
just hope Cricinfo asks him one more time who he thinks will make the final because he's onto something that we aren't. Maybe it's home conditions. I don't know. But in any case, we will know in 48 hours who will be playing the grand finale. I could well be eating my words given how bullish I've been in this episode. Not my usual self,
Yeah.
but let's see what happens. And Zaid, in case I get it wrong, I am sure you will not spare me. But in any case, thank you, and we'll speak after the semi-finals.
Thank you.